Hello, hello, hello. I'm Phillip LeClair. I'm the Chief Information Officer for the City of Pasadena, and thank you for coming to our joint presentation and interactive presentation this afternoon. We know this is the last session of the day, and there was a request actually that we maybe even cut the short a little early to enjoy the sunset up on the rooftop. So I have someone who's monitoring the time, and hopefully we can end quickly, and then we can do some questions. I'll be up there. I'm sure my counterparts will be up there as well, and we can dive into even more things. But what is in store for us today is we are talking about the hiring of data scientists, data analysts, and the hiring process, and how do we get people to come on board to our teams? What kinds of lessons learned? What kind of best practices have we experienced ourselves? Excuse me, and what we want this to be actually is a little bit more interactive with our audience. And so we'll talk about what we're going to be doing. But the point is that this is an evolving space. Data science as a title is starting to get bigger and bigger, and we really need to figure out, especially all of us in government, how we're going to compete with the private sector. And so there's no fast and clear and true way of doing this kind of work at all, and trying to find a breadth of people not only to hire but also volunteers that come from all different sorts of places that can also help us in how we're going to approach data science, data analytics. And so in today's our goal for today at the end is that we all are learning from each other, and we're all going to be able to maybe come up with a few gems, things that will be helpful, things that we'll hear from each other about what has worked and what struggles that we have and possible solutions that are, and also build some relationships maybe with each other. And then so after that, hopefully we are on a course to really be doing something to really help inspire and bring really great talent into our agencies. So without further ado, I have I think Behrang. No, Maksim's going to introduce himself as well, and we'll get to Behrang, and then we'll get started.
Cool. Thank you. So thanks for having me, everyone. So my name is Maksim, and I'm the Chief Data Officer for the City of San Diego. I've been there 4 years, and over that time, I've gotten to hire a lot of very good data science people. And what we kind of were thinking about when we were thinking about how to do this workshop and this presentation is we wanted to do something different because it's 4 o'clock at the end of a very long day, so you guys want to stay awake. And we kind of wanted it to also demonstrate there's a lot of different ways, and there's a lot of different things that we do well, and there's a lot of things that we do not so well. And we wanted to surface that, and instead of just us talking at you, we wanted to facilitate some best practices and kind of just share across the group. And what we've been doing in the city for something completely different, which is something I'm working on, data governance, we've been having people come in and do this thing where we separate them into groups, and we have them rotate for a short time across different subject areas. And there's a timer and there's a bell. It's like a boxing bell. And when the bell rings, you rotate. And what you're doing is you're putting Post-it notes on those notepads of things that you have seen go well within your hiring process, things that you feel have experience have gone right, things that you have experience that you don't do so well, right? I think a lot of us have complaints about the HR, right? Yeah, by the way, just let's be clear, all of this stays in this room, please. And then we also all of us have some things that, as we've been faced with hiring challenges, things that we've wanted to try, but things that we weren't sure if there's going to be a PR nightmare because of it, or if HR is going to freak out, or there's going to be some other reason why we didn't try it. And so that's kind of the bottom section of these sheets, and that's kind of crazy ideas. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to let Behrang introduce himself, and he's going to count you guys off, and we'll get going.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. My name is Behrang Abadi. I'm the Digital Transformation and Development Manager at the City of Santa Monica. And what that means is I oversee software engineering and enterprise information management. And our data officer from Santa Monica, Kegan Maher, is actually in the audience. He was in the previous class. So He's a great resource if you guys want to chat data. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to just go around the room. We're going to count off 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then we have notes notepads all over the room. That's going to be station 1, and then we're going to go clockwise. So station 2 is back over here, station 3, station 4, station 5. There it is. So 1, 2, back over here hidden, 3, 4, and 5. So we're just going to go and we're going to count off. So, and please remember your number, because I won't. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 4. Almost had an even number. All right, that's cool. So Phillip, Maksim, and I will be walking around, and we'll be contributing to the conversation as well. And at the end of our time, we will go ahead and do a debrief. And in addition to looking at some of the best practices that you all provide, we'll be providing some of our insight as well, because you're here partially to hear from us, right? So we don't want to make it all about you. We also want to contribute to the conversation. So please go ahead and jump into your groups, and we'll walk around and start to help you put things together. And remember, you're talking about what your organization does well, what your organization doesn't do well, and then some crazy ideas on the bottom about things you wish you could do as it pertains to hiring for data. Okay. So all the 1s are back here, 2s are over here, 3s are over there, 4s are over there, and 5s are in this little corner over here. Hey, good to see you. LA counts, yes. Yeah. I didn't even look at the company. Oh, no. Oh, yeah, LA counts. Cool, yeah, hey, nice to see you, man. Yeah, you. Yeah, I'm well.
Yeah, thanks again for doing the interview stuff.
All right.
Of course. I tried to get someone to do it.
All right. Is everybody in their groups yet?
Can I pass these out?
Yeah, first. Post-it. Wait. Here. All right. And does everybody have Post-it notes and something to write with? Okay, not yet.
Sure. And some materials back here.
All right. Does anybody not have Post-its or pens for their group? All right. So we'll get started. Also, one disclaimer that I didn't say is we've never done this before. So this could completely fail. This is not some exercise devised by somebody in a university. So if it does, just roll with it and we'll go from there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start the timer. You're going to have 4 minutes to put Post-it notes onto that board about things that we do well, like I explained earlier. In the last rotation, and I will announce when that comes up, what you're going to do is you're going to rotate again, and you're going to look at all of the things that are already on the board, and you're going to try to group them into clusters, into conceptual clusters, so that we can talk about them after the rotations are done. Yes, Data Science 101. So you guys are basically doing the work of an algorithm.
Also, the topic is at the top.
Huh?
The topic is at the top of the sheet.
Also, the topic is at the top of the sheet. And there's some kind of ideas to get you started. And we will be floating around. So if you have a question, if you're confused, if you want to, just talk, come grab us. We'll be around. And does anybody have any questions? All right. If this goes well, we'll get to write a blog post about it.
We're going to rotate clockwise, okay, everybody? So at the end of the timer, just move to the next station clockwise.
All right, I'm starting the timer. All right, so that was the end of the 6th round. And so if you guys can sit down, then what we'll do next is go through each one and have a 5-minute discussion and get you out of here by 5 o'clock.
We were going to start
Just in our order?
So I believe over here is, yeah.
I'm probably going to out before the heavy arms. I live in Palms.
Oh, okay.
How are you?
Why do you?
I don't know. We'll see. I'm totally improvising here. Okay.
Yeah, that's true. No one can read about us.
Let me put it on that.
All right, so let's see how this works. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick one bad one, and I'll talk about some of our experience, one bad one that we have experience with. And I'll talk about some of our experience working with it. And then I'll open it up for you guys for any additional thoughts. And then we'll also do the same thing for a good one. So the one that I'm picking is a cluster of 3 notes. It's called No Advertising, No Recruiting Budget, and Posted Only in One Place. And I think that's actually really interesting because there's another good one that says that all positions are posted in one place online. So I actually have a question for the person that, I don't know who wrote that, but I'm curious. You don't have to volunteer that you wrote that. I guess you would just by raising your hand, but we won't judge you. But why do you think that is? Why did you put that as a good thing? No?
So,
Or why do you think that would be a good thing? Yes, that would be another.
Maybe it was an inconsistency. Like, it's not all jobs only in one place.
Mm-hmm.
All the jobs should be at least in the same place.
Okay. And I actually kind of agree with that, right? Like the way we do it as well is we have a central place, we have NeoGov, and we post that up online. And what we do is we just create a short link to it, and that way, and we just all use one short link to link to it. That we can actually see analytics without asking HR for it. And what we do in terms of advertising, no recruiting budget, and post it only in one place. So in my experience, what we've done a lot with recruiting is we've done a lot of work with universities and hackathons and various local community organizations. And we're continuously kind of running projects with them. And what we do is I literally keep an Excel file with about 200 email addresses in there. And whenever we have a posting comes out, that entire mailing list, I have to bypass an Outlook restriction that we have, but that entire mailing list gets a link to that email. And one of the people on that email is, he runs the entire data science program at UCSD. So we, just as a result of that, we get a lot of applications from students in data science. And so I guess kind of, speaking to this note, I think that, yes, it's a good idea to put it in one place so you don't have 50 versions of a job description, but it's also a good idea to kind of use the resources you have, your social media, your comms department, your universities, and kind of have a contact list to recruit with. Has anybody run into issues advertising a job description through universities with kind of like, has anybody gotten their hand slapped by their internal organization? Huh? No, but it's a fear, right? It's a fear. It's like, oh, okay, so I'm going to tweet this or I'm going to post this on social media, but it's technically not an allowed account, right? Like my account is not an official city account, but I'm advertising the position. I'm like, is someone going to yell at me, right? At one point, and I've thought about it. Nobody's yelled at me yet, but I'm curious, right? I think it's worth asking. For a lot of the things that we do in terms of like advertising a position, is there things that we're afraid of doing that we really shouldn't be afraid of doing because we haven't gotten in trouble for it? So that's really good to hear that nobody's gotten their hand slapped just yet. Okay, one sec. All right, and let's take a look at one more. Yeah, I'll actually go back to, because they all kind of fit into the same category. One other thing I will add is with writing job descriptions. You guys haven't put anything on there with that, but one thing that, I have 10 seconds. One thing that we do is I actually put things like Python and R and very specific libraries in those job descriptions because people search for that information, and one, that allows it to pop up. And two, it also, I mean, we all know the part where, you know, your fellow city employee applies and you have to give them the interview because you don't want to have them not like you in a week. And so that kind of, and that's just a waste of time because you know you're not going to hire them. And that kind of eliminates some of that a little bit.
Just a quick comment on that. I think it's posted on that next sheet you just took, but there's a danger when you're putting specific technologies, specific libraries, that they'll be out of date in 2 or 3 or 4 years, and it happens all the time. And if nobody is going back to that job description and updating it to the latest libraries or whatever, then you're hiring people with 10-year-old skills that aren't really relevant to the job you're asking for. And I know that's happened definitely.
That's true. And so that's another one that you should update the job description every time you hire, or like you're starting to hire, or maybe have a cycle, right? We shouldn't be using a job description from 10 years ago. Okay, and I will relieve the podium.
Okay. Well, we're all in this together, so feel free to chime in. But so our next topic here is the hiring process. And I'll tell you that most of the bad items in the hiring process really have to do with things that a lot of us can't control, which is the classification of our jobs, the job descriptions, civil service, unions potentially. Also, there's some here lack of support prior to some decisions, but a lot of it focuses really on the job itself. And I think there is a track to come deal with that, but I don't think each individual person can really handle it on their own. It's something that probably an agency head or the bureau who handles a lot of the HR really needs to be a part of. But over time, that will change because as more and more data scientists show up and more data analyst work comes, and this gets more broadly defined, I believe that there will be positions created. But in the meantime, what do we do? That's really what the issue is. From a good perspective, and I share this as well, it's where are we going to be getting our people from? So on the first side, it's while there may be opportunities and open and vacancies, it's going to be very difficult and time consuming to have anyone come through a process that's really meaningful. Of course, there are times when there's exceptions or there are exempt employees or there's temporary staff that you can probably bring in, which you'll probably have already tried to go down those routes. But another aspect that has been labeled here too is what about the internal people? It doesn't mean internal within your own agency or department. It could be from somewhere else more broadly within the agency that you work in. Because what we found in Pasadena actually is that there are a lot of interests in data analysts, and how we've been able to really get people interested and get them trained and get them on working on something meaningful has been by trying to find out who they are. And one of the successful things that we've done is actually we provided a training opportunity for practically anyone in our city to come and be trained on some data analytics tools. And that was one way to find out, well, who really has the knack for this, who's really interested, and then who sticks with it. And so what we have happened outside of even our IT group, which does have some data analysts, we have a broader pool of people in other departments who are interested in these technologies, who have come to trainings, who do meet regularly to actually share data sets and try to build possibilities within each other. So I think one of the lessons learned for us in Pasadena, the hiring process isn't always about bringing the external person, because that can be very difficult, even finding the right person, even if you have all of the processes in place and everything ready to go. A lot of times the internal people may be overlooked, and there's people who are looking for an opportunity and people who can quickly demonstrate that they are interested and actually invest in themselves. Some other ideas that were here, also was about how to speed through a recruitment process, whether it's internal or external. It is to create panels that have people who are knowledgeable about the topic. And I think that today, while you're here today and also tomorrow, that you network with people here, because these are your colleagues, or will be your colleagues, who are like-minded, and the ones who will help you staff panels to get people through the process, who are starting to learn about what's necessary, what skill sets are important, and those are the people who you'll need to help support you getting through some of these processes, whether in your own agency or others. Some other big ideas here. I like the mandate per department. I remember hearing someone say that we really need a data science, data analysts in every agency, every department. And I think that just like we have budget analysts and we have payroll clerks and other important necessary people in all of our agencies, I think over time, when data itself becomes treated as a real asset that needs to be taken care of and nurtured, that there could be more of a mandate, maybe at a council or a board level, which actually states that no, everyone needs to be taking this seriously, and we really will have much more support for those job descriptions, for hiring people and building those practices. Do you want to add anything at all? Oh, I have 18 seconds left.
Yeah, really quickly. There's some other ideas over here. One of them are crazy ideas, a working or a testing interview. I think that that's a great idea, maybe a little bit of a crazy idea. I will, as someone who's tried to do this many times and been shot down by HR, I will tell you that I recognize that people are already under a lot of stress, and you may not get the best version of themselves as they're coming in, wearing clothes that they're not used to wearing, talking to people maybe in a hot room, and it's a tense environment. So consider asking them to bring in a piece of work that they've done and lead a peer review instead, right? So at that point, they have an opportunity to not just grab some work that they found off the internet, but something that's their own work, because they have to describe it, and there would be in a panel of their peers. So you would have people that are also technical, or people who are at that level or maybe slightly higher, to be able to evaluate their work. So I would encourage you to consider the notion of a peer review during an interview.
But I'll add like another really quick thing. So we kind of have a slightly different take on this. We give them there's a few, like 2 or 3 people if we can't decide towards the end, and it's been pretty much every time. What we do is we give them a take-home project, and we give it to them, and they kind of have some time over the weekend to do it. So it's of short times that they're not inflating their scope. And what that lets us, we rewrite the job description in such a way where it's kind of like how a project comes down from the management. Super vague, right? But come up with something awesome, and you kind of determine your own scope. And so what we do is we try to figure out if they can determine their own scope. So like they're not spending the entire weekend working on it, and what they can actually deliver, and how much research they were able to do to understand the project. So it's bonus points if they find PDFs online. It's bonus point. And what I mean by bonus points is we don't have a point system. It's just, look favorably on. So if they find PDFs online, or if they start calling people in departments, those are kind of additional pluses.
All right, so we have management next. All right, want to bring that over? Oh, sure.
I've done one of that during an interview process. I've been the person who could do that, and then And then I got to get on here, the organization, and it was less about the right answer, but it was just more of
How do you approach it?
thought process.
Yeah.
And as a candidate for a job, I actually really enjoyed it, and I thought that it was just not, they wanted to know how I thought, and I
Yeah.
appreciated that.
Exactly.
Any CLA people want to comment?
So as far as like reviewing the work of the applicant?
Yeah, because
Yeah.
if you're not on the hiring panel, you can't have it in the hiring process. Right, and you have to be a certain title above the, so a peer review is,
Right.
you can't do a peer review because you're a peer and not going to be a supervisor of that residency hiring.
And the person, wow, so the person that is in order to have input into the decision making, you have to be on the hiring panel.
No,
And
yes, from my understanding, yes, and you have to be able to supervise that position. So in our, it's like 5% salary gap between who you're hiring for and who you're on.
tough. And
Yeah,
and
so
and
that's what I mean. And going back to the take a work home, well, we have issues where they'll come back and sue us and say, this is what you asked me to do, and no one can pay for it.
Yeah, no. So,
Sorry to play devil's advocate, but.
no, I completely hear it. So the difference for us is, and this is maybe just because we have when all of our team is unclassified, so yes, for classified people, that's kind of what, I know some of the challenges I've seen on the boards for classified people, it's very different, right? Like it's much more rigid and much more structured. For people taking work home and coming back in series and saying that's work, they can sue us, but they're probably not going to win. We had an informal conversation with our lawyers about it, and so yeah, it's a risk, right? But I mean, I highly doubt someone's going to take the money to go and file a lawsuit against some work that they were asked to do over the weekend as part of the interview process, you know? And so it's kind of, you just got to weigh the risk. I'd much rather take that risk than risk hiring somebody that is going to completely be an incorrect person for the team. And eventually, we can't deliver, will eventually destroy the mission and the goal.
if you have a hard line from the HR department, one of the things that I've done is I really value understanding, to the point earlier, a person's thinking process. One of the things that I did when I was hiring software developers is I actually found a cartoon that I thought was a good example of encapsulation. And I said, give them the cartoon and have them explain to you what's happening, right? So they can tell you whatever they want. I'm most interested in them understanding how this relates to programming concepts and how they're able to communicate their thoughts. Do they understand the notion of what encapsulation is? Do they get what the cartoon is trying to get at? And that was a panel. That was an outside panel. That was not our panel. Outside panel of other cities coming in and rating the employee. So that's another way you can approach this.
I think everything we talked about just now, helping inform whoever is on the hiring panel or HR about the things that they should be looking for, especially a presentation, goes a long way. Part of, I think, the data analyst role is actually to have convincing presentations that are succinct, and adding that as a part of a panel, even if you're not in, is a good recommendation for this kind of role.
One way that we've kind of worked around that at SCAG is by having two interviews. One, a primary interview to weed out who are the top 5 candidates. And then we have a second interview with the team who they'll be working with to see if they're a good fit or not. The team is where you have the opportunity for presenting work examples, that type of thing. So it's less formal than a peer review, but provides that opportunity in a second interview to really make sure you get the right person.
Okay, great. We'll move on to management because there's some crossover potentially there too. Yeah.
Cool. Thanks. All right, we're a little behind schedule, so we'll blow through management pretty quickly. Shout out to the management group. They really got into the bucket exercise over there. You got many subgroups. Two things that I think are that I can speak to are communication and company culture. It wasn't that long ago that I hired our first data officer. He's standing in the back over there, Kegan. I had a lot of expectations for what he was going to do, and he didn't do a lot of them, most of them. I recently did his evaluation, and he got flying colors, as he always does. So I had to manage my own expectations, because I can't say, well, I wanted you to do these things, but then ignore the scooter epidemic that's happening in Santa Monica. So I have to manage my own expectations as the manager. He was an internal candidate, but an external candidate has to manage their expectations coming into the corporate culture. They're probably thinking they're going to come in and we're going to have Python and we're going to have R and we're going to have Jupyter notebooks all over the place. And they're going to come in and they're going to see Crystal reports, and they're going to see PDF, and they're going to see a giant wall where there should be data. So rather than the data being readily available and well documented, they're going to see a wall. So the applicant and you, to an extent, have to manage their expectations. So you have to work with the applicant to have them understand not exactly what they're in for, because then they might run off. But this is not like the private sector. Ladies and gentlemen, the police department is not just going to hand you data because you ask for it, right? We're going through our attorney's office to work with the police department to give their data over to the departments like mobility who asks for it. Reasonable asks, and there's a reasonable reason why they say no, but it comes down to managing expectations. And then lastly, managing the expectations of the culture. Data is the big thing now. I remember a few years ago, apps were all the rage, and everyone was going to hire someone who knew Objective-C, and they were going to come in and they're going to write apps that everyone was going to download, and it was going to just magically work on every device. And you know, how'd that work out? It didn't at all. So manage the organization's expectations. We have a data officer. We've got a couple of pseudo data scientists running around. We've got some data interns running around. We've got a data team that's still nascent, but very energetic. But we can't tackle all of the city's problems. We're not going to go from, you know, being born to going to Harvard Business School overnight. It takes time. And what I always remind people is it took us a lot of years to get to the place that we're at. It's going to take us a lot of years to get back out. So, you know, Kegan's coming in and he's made a great impact, but there's a lot more impact that needs to be made. So I would encourage you to manage the organization's culture. That's all I have to say about that. Maxim, Phillip, would you like to add anything?
Well, I'd also add, this is just building off of what Behrang just said, is that trying to manage not only performance of the person who's the analyst or the scientist, but also making sure that they're not frustrated and they feel like there's all dead ends, because there's so many leaps and hurdles to get over, whether the data is accessible, whether the data exists, whether the department or the agency or the group even cares to be analyzed of some sort. So trying to help through the culture of the organization and who you're working with by starting very small, because as soon as you start to build on some success, all of a sudden it opens up more doors, and then eventually it's a flood of like requests and people who wanting to participate. And that's what happened with us as well. So I always tell people, you know, even if you get a no or your staff gets a no, I always say it's not a no forever. It's a no just for not right now. And I'll work on trying to get to that yes sometime in the future. And then another way of also, I know it sounds kind of drab too, but a lot of times making inroads with other groups or getting their data or trying to help them. Sometimes you have to do something that they need first before you can get what you need. So doing some boring report in Crystal or some Excel document to give them, all of a sudden creates a relationship and allows you to kind of flourish. So managing performance, especially at the beginning, can be you know, trying to figure out, well, what are we doing? How do we know we're doing it well? How can we measure that we're actually making a difference? You'll know when you get there, because as long as you start at the beginning, very small. There we go.
Perfect.
All right, so I brought these over because I didn't want to take the whole sheet. There's a lot. So I really like these for retaining, and I think it's gonna, some of these are gonna dovetail with some of the management stuff that we've talked about. We're not that strategic, by the way, in how we came up with categories. I wish we were, but this is good. I would say that, sorry, one sec. There's a lot of these. Okay, so one thing is, how many of your organizations and your upper management and your politicians have some version of organizational attention deficit disorder, right? And you guys wrote that here in under top priorities, right? There's always like 40 top priorities and everything's a priority, and there's no, you kind of got to figure out what's the right thing. And that kind of leads into a very frustrated set of data scientists, because they could be working on one thing one day, another thing the other day. They can't focus. Oh, and by the way, you're also pulling them into meetings so that their hours now segmented into 1 hour chunks. And if you guys have ever written code before, that doesn't work. And so how do you handle that? And it's not easy, right? And what you guys wrote down here in this in that same board is, you wrote something called soft skill training, professional development, and kind of continuing education. And I think we have to set the expectation when we hire people that, yes, you are going to be doing some sort of data science, right? It is probably not going to be something akin to what you would be doing at Google, because we don't have that kind of data. But the counterweight of that, you're going to learn other skills. You're going to learn how to talk to people. You're going to learn how to discover problems, right? You're going to learn how to communicate with people that really don't know what Python is, right? And embedding that into the thought process of your team. So for example, for us, our team, they're responsible for the whole project. They're responsible from everything from the definition all the way to the delivery, right? So I pretty much get brought in when somebody has a crazy idea. I bring in one of my data science people, they sit through the meeting, and then generally I'm out unless there's a problem. And that's valuable, because that is a kind of experience that you're not going to get at any large organization. You're going to be a cog in a machine, and I think we don't sell that enough. Another thing that I saw here that was really interesting is, about, I like the one, employees that get promoted are unworthy. There's no good evaluation criteria. There's limited promotion paths. And I think all of those things are essentially true. And unless we as a government decide to value technology and create a technology progression track, like, for example, GE does for their engineers, which is likely not going to happen anytime soon, I think we have to start setting the expectations for our data scientists that, hey, you're going to be here for 2 or 3 years. We're going to flood you with knowledge. And you're going to learn more in these 2 or 3 years than you are ever going to learn in a different company. But at that point, unless you want to become a manager, you should really leave. And that's okay, right? I think we're used to hiring people to stay in these positions with pensions and all that. And if someone wants to do that, great, but that's a trade-off they're going to have to make. And, and I think I always tell the people on my team, like, be ready to leave within a month. Keep a current portfolio, network, like, be ready to go, because if you don't want to be here and you don't feel like you should be here, then don't be here, and that's okay. I'm getting a warning, and I'm going to cut this so that Behrang can talk.
Just one more note on retaining. I can't stress this enough. These external or extrinsic motivators like money and positions, they're great. They're temporary. So wherever possible, try to find some work that feeds the soul. So get to know your folks, get to know what they're interested in, and yes, we have many top priorities, but do what you can to enable them to have some projects that they have some ownership over and some interest in. Otherwise, you're just going to have unhappy and probably unproductive people.
Well, I'll add one more thing too. I think a lot of the people that I've come across with in the data science and data analyst arena, they're actually similar to kind of short-termers, but what they really crave are multiple types of projects to work on. So if you're in a place where there could be an infinite amount, like so a smaller city like Pasadena, you can turn over any rock and there's something to work on. So it's one of actually the points that I actually I share with people when I'm even hiring them, is saying, you know what, you can work on almost anything you want because everything needs help. And that's something, so there's something that draws people into almost anywhere. And I think that it probably exists in every agency to some extent. So distinguishing between the short-termers, the people who just need short-term projects and just keep going through them and meeting new people and collaborating and touching new data, that could be enough for them for a long time. Then you have the other group who are trying to create a long-term career, who maybe want to be program managers over something. And so trying to figure out what they want to do and what their goals are probably important on the longevity from promotions perspective. All right, our last one, and we need to probably wrap up pretty quick, is my favorite one actually, which is working with volunteers. Because face it, we can't hire all these people. There's a huge insatiable demand privately, and so we need to touch into people who want to come and do things for our organizations because they just want to be, they're do-gooders. They want to work with the community. They want to see a difference. They feel like they want to give back in some way. So tapping into those people, volunteers, startups who want to work with our organizations, as well as many other stakeholders in the community, are things that we've all done. I know Behrang and I, we have had hackathons over the years in our cities, and it's astounding that I can get 100 people who want to like work on data and solving some problems. It's been a while since we've done hackathons. They've kind of gone a little bit out of vogue, but the point is that those same types of people are still out there. One thing that we've done in Pasadena is really worked really closely with Caltech. And there's also another big consortium, the Data Science Federation. If you don't know about it, I know it's really big, especially in the mayor's office for the city of LA. And I know the county's involved a little bit, and Santa Monica too. But we submit project ideas. So I find departments or find groups that want to do some data science projects within my city. Find some ideas, and maybe you have your own as well, and submit them. And SCAG here is actually, if you're not in LA's county or LA city, SCAG will help package those projects together and then farm them out to about 15 or so universities who may pick them up as potential initiatives. And so Pasadena and Santa Monica, we both have projects that were picked up for this year. So that's one way of working with universities. And what we have done, and this is cultivated over about 4 years now with Caltech, is really, we have a data science course in Caltech where we actually feed them problem statements and feed them data, and we let them go after it. And what's exciting about it is that at the end of the day, there's usually about 1 or 2 groups who actually want to continue their project after their term. And so it still is a short-term relationship, but at the same time, it helps bring in some new ideas, new thoughts, and some invigoration of what we're trying to do. And so a lot of the same things, which I just described or echoed on our working with volunteers here, I think the good are the things that I've talked about, universities, startups, and trying to kind of frame problem statements so that others can actually come up with ideas that from a fresh perspective that they may not, the staff who are working within an agency may be looking at in a different perspective. But from the bad side, it is just that. It's temporary. These are volunteers. And how do you continue to keep people motivated and interested? And I would say in our experience, we go through ebbs and flows. But most of the time, people are there for a limited amount of time and energy, and then they kind of peter off because they have their own jobs to do. They have their own families, they have their own things that they want to accomplish. So it is a challenge, and our suggestion or what we've done is try to make things as narrow as possible and try to get the idea from these groups, more so than the analysis and all the work completed, because a lot of times those little ideas and gems germinate into something else that actually will change how we're doing a function or a business. And you want to add anything, Behrang or Maksim?
I'll just double down on exactly what you just said. Yes.
I guess one thing I will add is for like in our experience, it's been really helpful to not just engage the university students and give them a problem, but also bring in the department that you're solving the problem for. And we are becoming kind of the facilitators rather than the problem owners, because we don't know all the answers. I don't know all the intricacies of how the fire department operates, but I know the person in the department that does. And she's the owner of anything that we do with the university, because then they can just work directly with her and figure it out, and also figure out if the problem that they're thinking about pursuing is worth pursuing.
All right,
Well, great.
we're at time.
Well, at time, we want to make sure that everyone has a chance to see the sunset upstairs. Hopefully there's blue skies. But on behalf of all of us, I really appreciate all the ideas that were generated. Number one, I think that the networks that you're creating today and tomorrow, for sure, get business cards, because we are a small group that will continue to grow, but we need each other. And we had a suggestion, wanted to ask out there, whether some of the ideas and the good things that were done, would it be useful for us to kind of package these up and maybe put in some type of slide deck that we can all share? Would anyone like to see all that? Okay, then we will do that.
And if you guys have any suggestions, comments, complaints about the format itself, we'd love to hear about it. We just want to know if this worked, or if this was good, or if this didn't feel great at all. So yeah, let us know. Hopefully see you.
Catch us upstairs.
Yes.
Thanks.
Thanks, everyone.